At my husband's funeral, I overheard my daughter whisper to her husband, "Now we have to deal with the old woman." Her words cut deeper than the grief in my chest. But I stayed silent for the moment. After the funeral, I invited them to dinner, sat across the table, and finally told them what they needed to hear. What happened next? They started screaming. Rain beaded on the black lacquer of my husband's casket like it was refusing to sink in. The pastor's last word was still hanging in the wet air when my daughter straightened her coat and cleared her throat. "Mama," Keisha said, low and businesslike, as if we weren't standing in mud. "Regina has made a generous offer for the house." I blinked at her. The shovel leaned against the mound like a guard at ease. People were still holding programs with Raymond's picture. Marcus stepped in. "Tie too sharp for a day like this. We can make this simple for you, Barbara." "Simple," I repeated. Keisha glanced at her phone, screen lighting her face like a bad idea. $5,000 cash. Immediate closing. We handle everything. My jaw went tight. "At your father's funeral. Business doesn't stop for sentiment," she said. "Honestly, Mama, this is the perfect time to be practical." Rain found the back of my neck. I could feel the pastor freeze 2 steps away. Mr. Henderson from 2 houses over pulled his jacket closer and pretended not to hear. "That's our home," I said. "Was," Marcus corrected. "It's an old property. Honestly, the location is the only valuable part." I stared at the fresh earth. "I'm not selling." Keisha's smile didn't touch her eyes. "I'm not asking you to sell. I'm telling you we have a window. There's a development package in motion. If you stall, you lose leverage. Regina's being generous because of me. Because of her." The way she said it, like I owed her for arranging a robbery. "The house is worth more than that," I said. My voice surprised me. Thin but steady. 200,000, easy. Marcus gave a laugh sharp enough to nick. "Sentimental value isn't market value." "Neither is theft," I said. A murmur traveled the semicircle of umbrellas. One of Raymond's cousins looked at the ground. The pastor cleared his throat and tried to guide people toward their cars. Rain ticked harder. Keisha slipped a slim folder from her coat. She had planned this. She had rehearsed. "You don't have to decide now," she said while opening the folder right there beside the flowers. "But the deal's only good 48 hours. We can sign tonight, file in the morning. You won't have to worry about taxes, maintenance, any of it. Fresh start." 48 hours, I echoed. "Clock starts now," she said. Marcus touched her elbow. "Let's give her space," he said, loud enough for it to count as stagecraft. They stepped back. I stayed with Raymond until the last person drifted away. I watched the crew lower him into the ground and set the wood like a lid on a story I wasn't ready to end. When I finally turned, Mr. Henderson pretended to admire a soaked floral wreath. He'd heard every word. Maybe that was good. Maybe it was awful. The ride home was quiet. Raymond's hat still hung on the hook in the entryway, smelling like his cologne even now. I hung my jacket beside it and stood foolishly waiting for him to call me a stubborn woman for staying out in the rain with no umbrella. The house breathed around me. Floors I had waxed, windows I had painted, a notch on the doorframe where we'd measured Keisha's height one summer, her hair in braids that stuck up like little flames. I made tea I didn't drink. I sat in his chair. A clock ticked. Every sound felt amplified, like the house had an echo without him. Headlights paused outside. I went to the window and saw Keisha's sedan idle under the street lamp. She didn't get out, just watched the house, maybe deciding if I would cave in an hour, a day. She knew I hated confrontation. She knew I folded when voices rose. I turned off the living room light. The headlights stayed for 5 more minutes, then slid away. The house was loud in the quiet. Pipes muttered. The fridge clacked. I went room to room like a sentry, touching the things that were still mine. His recipe card for smothered chicken smudged with grease. The porcelain bluebird on the windowsill. A framed picture of Raymond in a blue suit, eyes wide at something I said 30 years ago. I told him I was sorry for what our daughter had become. I told him I should have seen it sooner. I slept in my clothes. The clock said 2:17 when a car door thumped. The sedan again. She didn't knock this time. Just sat there, engine rumbling, a metronome of pressure. After 15 minutes, it went. She was making sure I felt watched. Morning put a grey film over everything. I showered because Raymond would have scolded me if I didn't. I made eggs because he used to insist on protein before any hard day. I tied my shoelaces twice because my fingers couldn't seem to finish anything. At 9, my phone rang. "Mama," Keisha said, crisp and cheerful. "I'll swing by in an hour with the paperwork. We'll keep it easy for you." "No," I said. She was quiet for a full beat. "It won't get easier after today." "Good." She laughed. "You think you're holding ground. The ground is moving under you." I hung up. I didn't want to hear her metaphors. I took out the deed, the tax bills, the insurance. I spread them on the table and tried to feel like a woman with facts. My hands trembled. I looked at the phone, thought about calling Ms. Benton, the attorney who helped us with our wills. Then I put the phone down. Pride, or maybe shame. I didn't want to tell anyone my own daughter had tried to buy my house at her father's grave. At 10 sharp, the doorbell rang. Marcus stood there in a camel coat, holding a leather folder like a tray. Keisha didn't bother with pleasantries. She brushed past me into the living room and looked around with the air of a buyer, not a daughter. "We kept it clean," she said, meaning the documents. "Shoes," I said. "Off." She smirked, but she towed them off. Marcus did too. He moved like he owned the floor. They sat on my couch. I stayed standing. It made me feel taller than I felt. "Here's the structure," Keisha said, clicking a pen. "You sign here and here. Regina wires 5,000 by end of day. We record the transfer tomorrow. You retain 60 days to vacate, but we can be flexible if you act in good faith. We'll hire movers. We'll pay for storage for 6 months." "6," Marcus said, smiling like a clerk in a jewelry store. "I'm not leaving," I said. "You don't have to leave today," she said, as if I hadn't heard myself. "I'm not leaving at all." She tapped the pen against the folder, eyes sliding to the mantel where Raymond's ashes would have been if we'd done that sort of thing. "Mama, you can't maintain this place. You're one roof leak away from a disaster. One fall on those stairs, and we're talking hospital bills." "And we are not talking about any of that," I said. "We are talking about you trying to take my home." "Your home is a liability," she said. "Right now it's equity. Tomorrow it's mold. This is the last day this makes sense. You tried to do this at your father's grave," I said. "I don't care how you dress it up. The timing tells the truth." Her jaw clicked. "I was trying to spare you the drama. Quiet deal. Quick execution." "You wanted a scene," I said. "You wanted witnesses if I signed. You wanted a story." Marcus laced his fingers and leaned forward. "Barbara, you've always been proud. That's admirable. But pride becomes stubbornness. Stubbornness becomes harm. Keisha is trying to help." "Help me?" I asked, with a pen to my throat. He laughed, a tiny sound. "Let's not be melodramatic." The door knocked softly. Mr. Henderson's shape blurred through the glass. Jacket and concern. I opened the door before he could ring again. "I'm so sorry to intrude," he said. "I made cornbread. I was thinking of Raymond." "Thank you," I said, taking the dish. His eyes slid past me and widened when he saw Keisha and Marcus on my couch with papers. He nodded once, something decided in his face. "If you need anything," he said, and made sure his voice carried into the living room. "I'm right next door." "Thank you," I said again, louder. When I closed the door, Keisha was grinning. Neighbors don't own your house either, she said. No, I said. But they see. See what? You refusing a solution. You keeping a property you can't. Lower your voice, I said, and it came out in my mother's tone. The one I rarely used. She blinked like I'd slapped her without touching her. She took a breath. Look, there's also a tax angle. We can write certain. I'm not interested in angles, I said. I'm interested in the roof over my head. She spread her hands. Clock's ticking, Mama. Marcus slid the papers toward me and set the pen on top like a dagger laid down for a gentleman's duel. We'll give you one last kindness, he said. We'll pretend you weren't rude at the cemetery. We'll pretend you didn't accuse your daughter of theft. Sign, and we'll make this smooth. The house creaked, old wood answering insult with memory. I looked at the hall where Raymond had hung garlands one December, laughing until he cried when they tangled. I looked at the notch on the door frame. Measured heights. Measured years. 48 hours, I said. That's what you said. Less now, Keisha said with a quick look at her watch. I can hold Regina until tomorrow noon. After that, the deal shifts and you get nothing. That's not a threat. That's timing. Timing. I said softly, like a prayer that wouldn't come. Don't make me the bad guy, she said. I'm trying to be the daughter who takes care of things you can't. Marcus's smile flattened into a line. We should call Ms. Crane and confirm the wire time. She's waiting. Call her, I said. Tell her she can stop waiting. Keisha's jaw hardened. Don't do that, she said, less patient now. Don't be dramatic. You brought the drama to a cemetery, I said. She stood. Fine. We'll come back tonight, but if you sign then we can still. I'm not signing anything, I said. She moved closer. Too close. I could see the expensive thread in her blouse like a fence keeping her tidy. You will, she said very quietly, because the alternative will be unpleasant. Marcus touched her sleeve. Keisha. She stepped back, smoothed her coat, faced. The smile returned like a mask. She opened the folder, flipped to the signature page, and placed it on the coffee table. The paper looked plain. That was the trick. Evil never wore a label. She clicked the pen and set it on top, parallel to my name line. A neat invitation to betray myself. We'll be back at 6, she said. Eat lunch. Rest. Think clearly. Think clearly, I repeated. They put their shoes on. At the door, Keisha paused. We really don't have to make this hard. It already is, I said. The door shut. The house exhaled. I stood over the papers like they might jump. The rain came again, soft at first, then steady, pattering on the porch roof, on the azaleas Raymond babbied through heat waves, on the shingled shoulder of the home that had held us. The clock in the kitchen ticked toward noon. 2 muffled birds argued in the oak. Somewhere, a car door closed and tires hissed down the wet street. I pulled a chair to the coffee table. I sat. I put my hand on the pen. It was warm from her fingers. The point hovered over the line with my name printed neatly beside it, as if the ink already knew where it would go. At 5:50, the sky had the color of dishwater, and the house smelled like coffee I wasn't drinking. I'd moved the folder to the mantel where it could glare at me properly. The pen lay on top like a threat in polite clothes. Headlights swam up the window. Engine off. Doors thumped. I unlocked the deadbolt and left the chain on. I didn't want them ringing the bell like salespeople. Keisha didn't bother with hello. We'll keep this quick, she said through the screen. Marcus smiled that careful way of his and lifted the leather folder like a communion plate. I slid the chain, opened the door, and left it wide so the hiss of rain could witness. Shoes, I said. She huffed, but she towed them off. Marcus did the same. They crossed the threshold like boarding a plane they owned. We'll sign at the coffee table, she said. Easier on your hand. I'm not signing. Marcus set the folder down anyway and clicked the pen. We've massaged a couple of points to be kinder, he said, pushing papers toward me. 60 days becomes 90. Storage extends to 9 months, and an additional stipend for incidentals. What incidentals? I asked. Moving, cleaning, unexpected repairs that might crop up, Keisha said. Look, Mama, the city's rechecking permits in this corridor next quarter. If something pops, you'll be looking at fines or worse. Worse, I repeated. Compliance, she said with a tidy shrug. And taxes. You've underclaimed deductions for years. If someone reviews, it could look like you've been hiding income. They might assess back penalties. Her smile said, see how ugly I can make this. Ms. Crane has good people who can steer that away if we close now. Ms. Crane, I said. Does she have a first name? I'd like to know the woman buying my home for the price of a used lawnmower. Regina, Keisha said too fast, then correcting herself. Ms. Crane. Marcus's phone lit his palm. He put it face down. Barbara, we're being generous because we're family. That sentence doesn't know what it means, I said. Keisha leaned forward. The pen hovered in her fingers. I'm offering you a graceful exit from a problem you cannot fix. The problem is you, I said. She scoffed. Stairs are a problem. Roofs are a problem. Winter is a problem. Me. I'm the solution. You tried to be the solution at your father's grave, I said, and watched how her jaw ticked when I said father. No. She put the pen down, the sound small and hard. Then hear the other option, she said. We can play it the long way. We bring the city in. We have a friend on the council who's keen to revitalize this block. Codes get strict when revitalization is in the air. Your gutters, your wiring, the cracked step no one sees until they have to. She spread her hands. We let time and bureaucracy do what they do. Then I come back with less than 5,000. 5,000, I said. Say the number right every time you try to make it sound like mercy. Fine, she said. 5,000 now or headaches and 0 later. Marcus's smile thinned. We are trying to spare your reputation, he said. Quiet transaction. Dignity. The day you worried about my dignity will be carved on a stone none of us can lift, I said. He flicked a glance at the mantel. The folder moved, he said, as if that were evidence of thought. Progress. I lifted it, held it up, then dropped it back where it had sat. You wanted a scene? I said. Here, watch me not sign. She stood too quickly, knocking the pen to the rug. You want a scene, she said. Okay. She raised her voice enough for the street to hear. My mother refuses reasonable help. She refuses a safe plan. She chooses pride over family. Across the hedge, a blind tilted. Mr. Henderson, small as a sparrow, peered out. Witness to our little theater. Lower your voice, I said. She smiled without warmth and sank back to the couch. Clock keeps ticking, she said softer. Tomorrow noon. After that, we pivot. To what? I asked. She considered me like a contractor considering demolition. You'll see. Marcus gathered the papers neatly, aligning corners like a ritual. We'll check back in the morning, he said. You already checked, I said. We're done. He held my gaze a beat too long, then nodded, and they went. The door shut. Rain resumed its small applause at the eaves. I made myself stand still until their tail lights were gone. Then I got the junk drawer key and opened the file cabinet in the den. Deed, tax receipts, insurance. I laid them on the kitchen table, a paper fort. I took photos with Raymond's old phone because he always said paper disappears when you need it. I wrote out account numbers on an index card in my own hand so it would look like a woman making decisions, not just a woman drowning in them. The kettle shrieked. I turned it off and didn't pour. I stared at the deed until the letters blurred. Then I blinked them back into focus. The phone sat beside the sink like a dare. I called Ms. Benton. She answered on the second ring, voice like an old wooden desk. Barbara. Sarah, I said, and my throat thickened around her name. It's bad. Come in, she said. No questions, no lecture, just a stairway. You're invited to step onto. I can explain on the phone, I tried. Come in, she repeated. I'll hold the last slot. I can be there in 20. Take 30, she said. It's raining. I put on Raymond's raincoat because it was the one by the door and because I missed him inside it. I grabbed the folder, then put it back, then grabbed the photos on the phone instead. I locked the door, jiggled it twice, and stepped into the wet. At Benton and Associates, the lobby plants looked the same as they did when Raymond and I signed our wills. Ms. Benton had added a new receptionist, pink nails, gentle eyes, who offered me a tissue without making a face about a woman crying in public. I took it and didn't use it. Barbara, Ms. Benton said, opening her door. Her office hadn't changed. Shelves of law books no one reads anymore. A brass lamp with a green shade. A framed black and white of her mother in front of the same door. She closed us in and sat, hands folded, patient as a Sunday. I told it. The graveside, the offer, the folder, saying no. The way Keisha looked around my living room like measuring it for someone else's couch. Ms. Benton didn't interrupt. When I finished, she let the silence sit long enough to make room for breath, then said, "We can't keep them from asking. We can keep them from taking." "I don't have money for a fight," I said. "You might not need a fight," she said. "You need a shape." She slid a legal pad across. "There's a structure that lets you keep living in the house while placing title in a charitable trust. It locks the roof over your head and removes certain temptations from family." Her mouth quirked at that word. "It's tidy if done correctly, but it's not a toy. Once done, it's done." "I won't lose my home," I said. "You won't," she said. "And no outsider, not your daughter's developer, not your daughter, can slap a lien on what you don't own." She raised a finger. "But you must understand, you'd be giving the title to the trust. You get a lifetime right to live there. Full stop." "Could I still paint the kitchen?" I asked, because I was a woman who didn't know what else to ask. "You can repaint the universe, Barbara," she said and allowed herself a small smile. "We'll keep receipts. You'll act as steward, but the deed title would be out of reach for anyone looking to monetize your grief." "Ms. Crane," I said. "Yes," she said. "And anyone with her teeth. What does it cost?" "Paper," she said. "Some filings, a small fee to the trust for administration. If you choose Lighthouse Community Trust, I know their director. They move quickly when it's clean. I'll waive my customary where I can. Raymond sent my husband soup when he was sick. Debts are not all financial." I swallowed a hard thing. "Keisha will call me weak," I said. "Keisha already decided who you are," she said, blunt and kind at once. "Let her be wrong." She laid out what I needed. ID, current deed, tax bills, proof of insurance. I had everything because I had laid them out like a fort. "We can file a notice by tomorrow," she said, "if we hustle." "Hustle," I said, tasting the word like it belonged to younger women. "Okay." She slid a pen across. "This doesn't bind you. It authorizes me to get the conversation started with Lighthouse. Decision comes when we have papers in front of you. You sign nothing you don't understand." I signed that pen like it was a handrail in a dark stairwell. When I left, the rain had gentled to a mist that made the street lights look haloed. I drove home like an old woman drives. Careful, shoulders near my ears. I parked and sat with the engine off, listening to whatever a car sounds like when it cools. The house loomed, familiar. The porch light blinking, bulb going, another thing I'd fix. A black sedan eased to the curb across from my driveway and idled. Not a neighbor's car. The window stayed up. I couldn't see a face. I got out and walked up my path. Keys in hand, head up. Footsteps behind me. No, just my breath big in my ears. I unlocked the door, stepped in, locked it again, turned the porch light off, peeked through the curtain. The sedan still idled. I could see the faint blue of a phone screen glow, a hand holding it. Then the screen went dark. The car didn't. I sat in the living room with the lights off and looked back through the house to the kitchen where the papers lay. And in my mind, I could see Ms. Benton's steady hands, the shape of the solution. The clock rolled its round numbers forward. The sedan kept humming like a refrigerator in a stranger's house. At 11:30, it finally pulled away, tail lights washing the room red for an instant. The house returned to its own noises. I went to the mantel, took the pen, and put it back in the drawer where the birthday candles lived. I folded the signature page and slid it under the phone book as if weight could flatten a bad idea into silence. Outside, rain stitched the dark together. Inside, I waited for sleep and thought about morning and about people who circle houses with their headlights off. Morning came in the color of unwashed dishes. I woke with the taste of copper and a list in my head. Deed, insurance, tax bill, ID, coffee, swallowable, jacket, keys. I put everything in Raymond's old canvas tote, the one he took to the farmer's market that still smelled faintly of peaches, and set it by the door like a suitcase for a trip I hadn't planned to take. Ms. Benton called at 8:07. "Lighthouse can see us," she said. "If we're there before 10, we can get intake stamped and a draft deed prepared by this afternoon. Their director, Mr. Alvarez, owes me a favor, but favors wilt after lunch." "Before 10, I said, the words making a clock in my chest. "We'll need your driver's license and the most recent property tax statement. Also any mortgage payoff letter, if one exists." "No mortgage," I said, and it felt like the only easy sentence I'd said all week. "Good," she said. "I'll meet you in the lobby at 9:20. Bring your fort." I hung up and looked around the room the way you look around a campsite to make sure you're leaving no trash to call wild things to your tent. The house hummed. Papers on the table, the pen in the drawer, the signature page under the phone book like a smothered snake. I stepped onto the porch and locked the door behind me, then checked the lock twice, then a third time. Because grief makes you superstitious. The oak shook off last night's rain. A crow on the wire watched me like a foreman. On the drive, I saw the black sedan once. In my mirror, 2 blocks back, slowing when I slowed, speeding when I sped. Maybe it was a different car. Maybe my brain saw teeth in every shadow. I turned right when I didn't need to, then left, then took the long way past the bakery because Raymond liked the smell. When I checked again, the sedan was gone, or it never was. Lighthouse Community Trust occupied the old bank off Peachtree Avenue, the one with marble floors that had seen enough shoes to be half polished by strangers. Mr. Alvarez met us in the lobby with a file tucked under his arm and the calm of a person who knew how to move papers through sticky places. "Ms. Benton," he said, "and you must be Barbara." His handshake was firm, warm. "I loved the garden photos you sent. Azaleas, you don't see that kind of discipline in July anymore." I blinked. "They were my husband's," I said. I just did the heavy lifting." "Then we'll keep lifting," he said, leading us to a glass-walled conference room that felt like a fishbowl for good ideas. He clicked a pen and slid a 1-page overview over the polished table. "Retained life estate," he began. "You transfer title to the trust. In return, we grant you a lifetime right to live in the property. You keep ordinary upkeep, utilities, routine maintenance. We cover big-ticket structural emergencies through a reserve we build with you. No one, not a developer, not a relative, can place a lien against what you do not own. They can make noise. They cannot attach teeth." Ms. Benton nodded at me like, "See, this is the shape we discussed. What can go wrong?" I asked. It was the only grown-up question I had. Mr. Alvarez smiled like a person who'd heard the right fear. "We do this clean, not fast. We need your consent and capacity clear on paper and on video. We need to confirm no outstanding encumbrances. We file with the county today. Once recorded, You are secure. Before recording, there's a window where someone can try to throw sand in the gears. My job is to shorten the window. How short? I asked. He checked the old brass clock on the credenza. If we start now, we can courier to county records by 11:45. They stamp until noon today, take lunch, and resume at 1. I'd like your papers stamped before lunch. Let's start now, I said, and found my breath steadier than I expected. We opened Raymond's tote like a picnic. Deed, tax bill, insurance, IDs. Mr. Alvarez fed them to a scanner the size of a toaster. Ms. Benton read clauses aloud in a voice that sounded like a safe opening. They asked me simple questions on camera. My name, my address, my date of birth, what day it was, why I wanted to do this. I said the words slowly so each could stick to the wall. I intend to keep my home. I'm not being forced. I'm acting of my own free will. Saying it made it truer. Mr. Alvarez had me initial here and here, then sign a draft deed and a memorandum of life estate that would be recorded alongside it. He explained each paragraph in English instead of law. When we hit a line about responsibility for ordinary wear, he paused. Paint, appliance replacement, lawn care. You'll keep doing those as you do. If a tree falls through your roof in a storm, we have a reserve for that. If you want to add a ramp for future mobility, we'll cost share. This is partnership, Barbara, not a swap. I nodded. The word partnership put weight under my feet. 2 more things, he said, looking me square. 1, once this is filed, you cannot take it back because someone cries or someone threatens or someone promises you diamonds for dirt. This is not a lever to move later. It is a lock. 2, we will send a courtesy letter to your daughter, not for permission, for notice. Sound fair? Fair, I said, and my stomach tightened on that word. Notice was a fuse, but secrecy was worse. We were at the last initial when my phone, face down on the table, shivered itself forward against the glass. Unknown number first, then Keisha's name flashed with the insistence of a fire alarm. I didn't pick up. The unknown rang again, then Keisha again. She left it to voicemail and immediately called a 3rd time. The trick to force a bypass. I flipped the phone and hit decline. She called again. Decline again. In the quiet after the 5th decline, a text lit the screen from a number I didn't recognize. A photo. Blueprints, grainy, stamped Oakwood Heights redevelopment phase 1. Marcus, of course. A bubble followed. Clocks ticking. Demo permits prepped. You will not like worse. I swallowed. Mr. Alvarez's eyebrows lifted a fraction. Ms. Benton leaned over just enough to see the photo, then looked at me like, don't let them shove you off your feet. The phone rang again. Keisha. Voicemail this time. Her voice wore patience like a paper mask. Hey, Mama. Just checking in. Ms. Crane is in from out of town with documents ready. Would be a shame to make her wait when she's being so accommodating. Let me know if we should come by. Say 10:30. We can get this nuisance out of your hair. Love you. Love you landed like a wet leaf. I pressed the phone face down again, slower this time. Mr. Alvarez said nothing, and I loved him for that. He tapped his pen against the clock. We have 90 minutes, he said. The county clerk nearest the front desk goes to lunch early. If we catch her, we get a clean stamp and someone who cares that their stamp is straight. He slid the last page to me. Initial here and sign here, and we moved to recording. I initialed like a woman signing her own name onto a lifeline. I signed with a hand that didn't shake. Ms. Benton countersigned as preparer. Mr. Alvarez clipped the stack with a brass clip that had probably outlasted marriages. Courier, he called, and a young man appeared so fast I wondered if he'd been waiting with a scooter running. He put the packet in a manila envelope, sealed, signed across the flap, then added a pink sticky note. Priority before lunch, please. The courier nodded and left at a jog. Somewhere a door fluttered, then thumped shut. We sat. Mr. Alvarez used the pause to start the courtesy letter. Dear Ms. Keisha. He stopped. Last name. I gave it. Keep it short, I said. For her, extra words smell like opportunity. He nodded and typed 4 sentences that said everything without saying anything extra. Title transfer to Lighthouse. Lifetime occupancy secured. Maintenance responsibilities. Questions to counsel, Ms. Benton. He didn't include my phone number. He did include the docket number we'd have once recorded. A fact that would double as a wall. My phone lit again with a new text from Keisha. I know where you are. Lighthouse. Cute. Don't embarrass yourself. We'll fix this. A second later. We're outside. I looked up. Through the glass wall, I could see the lobby. Keisha's height. Keisha's coat. Keisha's impatience pacing between potted palms. Marcus beside her, hair perfect, eyes bright with the kind of excitement hunters get when the brush moves. Ms. Crane was not with them. Or she was the calm woman in a grey coat pretending to study a brochure. Hard to tell at a glance. The receptionist spoke to them and lifted a hand in the thinking uniform body language of people saying, 1 minute. Mr. Alvarez followed my gaze and didn't sigh, which I appreciated. Would you like me to speak with them? He asked. Or would you? I don't want to speak to them at all, I said, honest as a cut. Then I will, he said and stood. Ms. Benton, stay with Barbara. He stepped into the lobby with the posture of a person who has carried both donation checks and eviction notices and survived both. Through the glass, I watched him smile professionally at Marcus, nod once at Keisha's 2 fast words, and hold up a single finger. Wait. He guided them away from the conference room toward 2 chairs by the ferns. Keisha's mouth worked. Marcus's mouth smiled. Mr. Alvarez pointed to the clock. A boundary in 4 inches of brass. Breathe, Ms. Benton said quietly. I am, I said. I just haven't in a while. She allowed herself a small huff. You're doing fine. They're doing theater. We're doing paper. The courier texted Mr. Alvarez. County. Line short. He held up the phone so I could see it, then placed it face down again like we were in church. Keisha called once more. I let it roll to voicemail. The message came through before the notification had finished chiming. Mama, Lighthouse can't shelter you from everything. There are other ways. Guardianship evaluations. Safety checks. You know how long those take. Weeks. Months. You don't want strangers in your kitchen asking whether your knives are too sharp. Let's handle this like family. 10 minutes. We're in the lobby. The word guardianship crawled across my skin like cold ants. Ms. Benton saw my face change and lifted a hand. Empty threat unless they can show incapacity, she said, which they cannot. And if they try, we counter on paper. They want your fear. Don't rent to them. Mr. Alvarez reappeared in the doorway. She's escalating to volume in 3, 2. He flicked his eyes toward the lobby where Keisha's hands were drawing hard angles in the air. We have about 15 minutes before she becomes a spectacle, and I prefer not to let her ruin my marble. Before I could answer, the courier texted again. Stamped. Mr. Alvarez's face opened like a window in summer. Stamped at 10:58, he read. They love me. Something in my chest unclenched so fast I went lightheaded. Ms. Benton's hand was on my shoulder before I knew I was swaying. Sit, she said. And I did. And then I laughed once, short and stupid, because my body had forgotten how to do relief. Mr. Alvarez printed the stamped receipt and slid it across the table like a magic trick. The county's ink sat there, clean and square. Proof, not hope, not bargaining chip. Ink. Now, he said, composed again. Would you like to leave through the side door, or would you like to walk out the front with your shoulders where shoulders go? I looked at the paper. I looked at the door. I thought about the porch light, the azaleas, the notch on the doorframe with Keisha's 8-year-old height. I thought about Raymond's hands in dirt, Raymond's voice in the kitchen, Raymond's hat by the door. I thought about every time I had swallowed my own no to keep peace that never kept. Front, I said. We walked into the lobby as a small procession. Mr. Alvarez with the stamped sheet in a clear plastic sleeve. Ms. Benton with her briefcase. Me with the tote slung over my shoulder like a woman who had just put down something too heavy to carry alone. Keisha turned, mouth ready, and then she saw the sleeve and the ink, and whatever speech she had prepared tripped on its own feet. "What did you do?" she said, the sentence falling down a stair. "I kept my home," I said. "That's stolen from me," she said. And there it was, naked at last. Marcus recovered faster. "We'll challenge," he said. "There are review windows, judges." Mr. Alvarez's smile stayed professional. "There are notice periods. You've just been noticed. If you have questions, our counsel is Ms. Benton. You can direct all correspondence to her." Keisha looked at me like she could burn the ink through the plastic sleeve with her eyes. "You think this is permanent?" she said. "I know it is," I said. She laughed without humor. "Then we do it the hard way," she said softly, too close. The receptionist glanced up like a referee considering a whistle. 10 minutes are up," Mr. Alvarez said mildly, and showed her the wall clock like a mirror she didn't want. We stepped past them and into the bright day that had decided to be kind. The air smelled like rain on warm stone. A bus sighed at the curb. The marble steps felt less like stairs and more like a stage exit. On the sidewalk, Ms. Benton squeezed my shoulder once, then let go. "You'll get a title confirmation by mail in a week," she said. "We'll send a certified copy to your insurance carrier today. You'll sleep tonight." I looked back through the glass at Keisha pacing and Marcus texting, and Mr. Alvarez walking to the receptionist to say something that made the young woman smile. I looked forward at the street I'd driven for 40 years. I breathed in. I breathed out. My phone buzzed again. A new text from Marcus. A screenshot of the demolition plan overlaid on a calendar. Arrows. Dates. All theater. Then another from Keisha. Just 5 words. "This isn't over. Noon tomorrow." I typed back, hands steady. It was over at 10:58. Send. The stamped receipt sat on my kitchen table like a small, polite guard dog. Every time I passed it, my shoulders unhitched another inch. I made a copy, then another, like a woman who finally believes in fire escapes. At noon, an email from Mr. Alvarez chimed. Scanned packet, recorded instrument number, a cover letter for my insurance carrier. Ms. Benton forwarded her notice to Keisha with the efficiency of a woman mailing a snowplow schedule to someone who thinks they can argue winter away. I ate toast at the sink and tasted it. Outside, the oak shook rain down like confetti that had missed its party. When I stepped onto the porch, Mr. Henderson waved from his steps with a casserole the size of a briefcase. "I heard something," he said. "Good something." "Paper something," I said, and held up the sleeve with the stamp. He leaned forward, nodded like a nurse approving a healing wound, and set the casserole in my hands. "You look taller," he said. "I signed my back straight," I said. He smiled. "If they come, I'll water the azaleas with a hose accidentally set to jet." Back inside, I made a list the way Raymond used to. Tiny squares to fill in. Small battles won on paper. Call insurance. Done. Replace porch bulb. Done. Put stamped copy in safe. Done. Do not pick up calls from numbers I don't know. Underlined. I changed the bulb and the porch light shone like it meant it. I took the garbage to the curb and waved at the mailman who waved back and said, "Sorry about your loss." The kind of sentence that drops 5 minutes after you need it and still lands where it should. At 3, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman I didn't recognize. Gray coat, black umbrella, a face like a smooth river stone. She held a leather folio the way Keisha had held the graveyard folder. Behind her, a black sedan idled with nobody in the driver's seat, like a horse trained to come when it hears a whistle. I opened the door, but not the screen. Ms. Crane, the woman said. She didn't offer a first name. Her voice had the weight of an elevator that always arrives. May I? No, I said. She nodded once as if I'd guessed correctly on a test with only one question. Congratulations on your filing, she said. Thank you, I said, surprised to hear the word in my mouth. This doesn't change that you need liquidity, she said, eyes scanning past me at the hall, at the family photos, at the ceiling line, like she could see the skeleton of the house through plaster. I need air, I said. I have that. I represent parties interested in providing a short-term bridge loan secured by alternative collateral, she said, choosing her words like stepping stones. Immediate funds, quiet resolution, no press, no friction. Alternative collateral, I said. Meaning homeowners association dues, she said. Past due municipal fees, fines, things that have a way of accruing. I'm in a position to be helpful. I don't have an HOA, I said. They file as Neighborhood Preservation Association, she said mildly, as if the name were the entire trick. Your block was folded in 2 years ago by an opt-out vote most people didn't realize they'd skipped. Bylaws allow immediate lien for unpaid assessments. Today, that's $47. Tomorrow, it could be $470, then $4,700 compounded. It's unfortunate how quickly math behaves. Lies don't compound, I said. They just rot. She smiled as if she appreciated a fresh metaphor. I'd like to buy your inconvenience, she said. There's a number where nuisance becomes quiet. She lifted the folio. We can wire this afternoon. To whom? I asked. To you, of course, she said. I thought the number was 5,000, I said, and watched her face for the small flinch. There wasn't one. That was yesterday's landscape, she said. Today, I'm offering more because I'm a generous woman. Because I don't like adversarial processes. Because I believe good people can disagree and still transact. I don't transact, I said. I live here. She adjusted the umbrella so the rain wouldn't spot her coat. You've made a clever move, she said. Clever moves invite counter moves. Eventually, a court gets bored with clever and looks for practical. Practical is often the person who has the fewest problems on paper. The sedan's window hummed down and Marcus leaned across the console with a smile that looked like it had slept 13 hours. Barbara, so glad someone competent is speaking with you. I didn't wave. I didn't move. Ms. Crane did a small half-turn toward the car, then back to me. Why don't we keep this between adults? She said, gentle as an ice pack. I propose a line of credit secured by the association account. We file a consensual lien, completely routine, nothing aggressive, which gives us first position to resolve any surprises. You get immediate funds and a partner. I have a partner, I said. It's the trust. She nodded like I'd passed another quiz. Then the trust will be comforted by our involvement. We're great at smoothing. Smoothing is sanding a rough edge, I said, not cutting the board in half. She let the smile drop a fraction, enough to show the teeth behind it. Or, she said, we simply let the assessment snowball. We let the city recheck sidewalk heaves. We encourage a safety inspection. We invite questions about stair height and lighting in older homes. We all keep our hands clean and our clothes pressed, and someday you wake up tired enough to ask for a chair, and I will have one. Chairs are for friends, I said. You brought a leash. She sighed as if disappointed in my lack of hospitality. You don't have to like us to accept help, she said. Refusal is not principle. It's often just fear wearing a bow tie. I turned the deadbolt and let it click because I like the sound of that small machine doing its job. Have a good afternoon, Ms. Crane. She didn't press the bell again. She didn't knock. She stepped back, dipped her head as if we'd completed a ritual I didn't understand, and walked toward the waiting car with the umbrella still perfect over both her and the folio. Marcus lifted his fingers in a bye-bye wave they teach at finishing schools. The window slid up. The sedan pulled away without tire noise like it had someplace nicer to be rude. Inside, I texted Mr. Alvarez. Woman named Crane. Keisha lean talk. He replied in under a minute. We'll confirm association status. If real, we'll pay $47 and demand ledger. If fake, we'll send a letter. Either way, they don't attach to trust-held title. Breathe. I breathed. Then the phone rang with a number I did recognize. The clerk's office. A cheerful woman confirmed the recording and offered to mail an official copy, and if I wanted, send one to my insurer for me. 2 birds, she said. I said yes to the birds. By dinner time, my porch light was steady and my mailbox had a single envelope from the city. A notice about a proposed rezoning hearing for Oakwood Heights. I laughed once. Short theater. On the back, a cartoon skyline promised revitalization. I put it under the stamped receipt like a bug pinned to a specimen card. After dark, the neighborhood had that wet quiet where tires sound louder and dogs bark like they're narrating a crime drama. My phone vibrated on the mantel. A message from a number I didn't know with a link. Your mom gave the house away. The link went to a neighborhood forum thread with 27 comments. Speculation, bad math, the word scam tossed like rice at a wedding. A photo of me on the lighthouse steps taken through glass, page's angle. My name misspelled twice. One kind defender. Or maybe she's protecting herself from vultures. Mind your business. Username looked like Mr. Henderson's grandson. I made tea. I let it go cold. I scrolled and then put the phone face down. The house hummed like it had always hummed. Unbothered by digital pitchforks. A soft knock came at 9:10, the kind that wants to be a secret. I looked through the peephole and saw Keisha's face up close, pale in the porch light, eyes bright the way people's eyes get when they've convinced themselves they're righteous. I opened the door, but left the chain. She didn't waste time. She held up a velvet ring box I hadn't seen in years. Raymond's ring. Wide gold band, tiny inscription on the inside from the day we said yes to each other and laughed that our marriage might be dented but not broken. My breath went somewhere else. Where did you get that? I said. She tilted her head. Daddy took it off sometimes to work in the garden. You know how he was. Where did you get it? I said again, and the chain rattled when I leaned closer. She smiled, soft, almost kind. From a safe place, she said. Mama, this is simple. You come with me tomorrow. We talk to a judge. Just a conversation about what Lighthouse did. We walk it back. We agree to a family plan. I put this back where it belongs. She tipped the box so the gold flashed. An old star demanding attention. Or, she said, voice dropping to that quiet she uses when she thinks she's winning, we let the ring take a small vacation. People lose things when they're stubborn. Houses, keepsakes, reputations. You decide what story you want. Behind her, the night felt close. The porch light made a gold circle that wasn't big enough for both of us. The chain between us hummed like a note held too long. Say yes, she whispered, and set the ring box on the rail like a crown she could sweep away with one finger. I looked at the box. I looked at her hand hovering near it. I looked at the house that had held our life and at the paper guard dog on the table and at the doorframe notch with her height from a summer when everything smelled like peaches and cut grass. Careful, I said, voice level. That's your father's. That's my leverage, she said, and smiled. She let the smile linger like a match burning down to her fingers. Then she plucked the box off the rail and rolled it in her palm. A coin trick she'd taught herself in high school to look interesting at parties. Last chance, she said. Put it away before the neighbors see you waving it like bait, I said. Neighbors are the point, she said, and slipped the box into her pocket with theater. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Courthouse. We'll ask a judge to review your capacity. Friendly chat. If you cooperate, we keep it quiet. If you don't, well, Marcus says the forum loves a saga. She took a step back into the dark beyond the porch light. Sleep on it, she said. If you can. She left on soft shoes. The night swallowed her. The porch light hummed like it had decided to work overtime. I closed the door and slid the chain and stood there with my forehead on the wood until I remembered Wood doesn't hug back. I texted Ms. Benton 2 sentences. She has Raymond's ring. Threatening guardianship review. Morning. The typing dots came and went. Then her reply. Do not engage at courthouse. If they file, I'll intercept. Ring is leverage, not law. Sleep if you can. Call me at 7. Sleep came in parts. A 20-minute crash. A bolt upright at 2 a.m. A dream where the house had hinges like a jaw and someone was prying it open with a tire iron. At 6, I gave up and made eggs because my body still knew the recipe. At 7, Ms. Benton's voice came calm through the receiver. We'll get ahead of them, she said. I've already emailed the probate clerk a heads up that any guardianship claims are contested and counsel is present. I'll meet you at the courthouse doors at 8:50. If they try to grab a judge in the hallway, they'll meet me instead. Keisha has Raymond's ring, I said, and the words shivered the way the faucet shakes when you turn it too far. She says she'll lose it. We'll log it, she said. Today, and we'll put her on paper for possessing it. Leverage turns into evidence when you write it down. This used to be simple, I said. Family never is, she said. Bring the stamped receipt, your ID, and the courtesy letter copy. Wear the coat with pockets that close. I did what people do on hard mornings. I showered and made the bed. I folded the blanket at the foot the way Raymond liked. Sharp corners, no extra. I tucked the stamped receipt into the inside pocket of my jacket like a talisman, and the courtesy letter into the other pocket like a second one, and I drove. The courthouse steps had pigeons who didn't care about anyone's drama. Ms. Benton met me with a thermos cup and a nod at the clock tower like we were early, and that mattered. We stood side by side as if we'd always done that. At 8:58, Keisha and Marcus came up the other side with gait and posture like a couple in a campaign photo. Mama, Keisha said, practicing warm. We'll do this quickly. Ms. Benton moved an inch forward, professional smile on. Good morning. I represent Ms. Barbara, she said my last name like it weighed something. Any concerns about capacity or undue influence will be addressed through formal petition with proper notice. You do not get ex parte relief to embarrass her. Marcus's smile gave nothing. We just want to ask a few questions, he said. Make sure she understands what she signed. I understand, I said, and let the words stand there. Keisha's eyes sharpened. Fine, we'll file, she said, and gestured to Marcus to peel off. He went toward the clerk's window, hips spelling confidence. Ms. Benton went with him. Keisha stayed with me, hands in pockets, mouth near my ear like a sister in church. You've made a mess, she said. Daddy would hate this. Daddy hated cruelty, I said. He'd hate what you've become. She flinched, quick and small. Then she smoothed it away and tried another door. You think the trust makes you untouchable. You think paper changes blood? It doesn't. It changes doors, I said. At the clerk's counter, Marcus's voice rose half a notch. Ms. Benton planted her elbows and did that head tilt thing that says, I will outlast you without breaking a sweat. The clerk handed a packet toward Marcus. Ms. Benton handed a different packet back. They volleyed papers like civilized people argue. The clock struck 9 like a metal spoon on a glass. Marcus returned with a brittle smile. Evaluation scheduled, he said. Next Tuesday. Home visit. Keisha's eyebrows kicked. She hadn't expected the delay. In the interim, we'll be putting some family concerns on the record, he added smooth. You know, falls, confusion, erratic decisions. I mowed the yard in straight lines yesterday, I said. Your concern is noted. Also, he said, almost as an afterthought, I told Pastor Lee you'd be addressing the congregation Sunday to explain why you donated the home. People worry when someone gives away assets. Scams are rampant. Ms. Benton's face didn't move, but I felt the air shift. Public. He was dragging it into the square. See you Sunday, Keisha said, pleased at last. 10 a.m. Don't be late. Wouldn't miss it, I said and surprised myself. If they wanted public, fine. I could be public. I had a voice, and if it shook, well, it would be honest about where it came from. We left the courthouse with no emergency judge and no quick humiliation. Enough to stand, not enough to relax. On the steps, Ms. Benton said, we'll prepare for Tuesday's home visit. No problem. Clean counters, safe stairs, meds in labeled bottles. We'll stage it like a photo of good decisions. She adjusted her glasses. As for Sunday, if you want to speak, we make it a boundary, not a brawl. Short, clear, no names. What about the ring? I asked. Police report, she said. Not theft. Possession of family heirloom pending return. Phrase it like the adult in the room. Documentation makes people behave. We filed the report at the station a block over. The officer, a man with sleeves of fern tattoos, wrote it down with the professionalism of someone who'd heard every flavor of family ridiculousness. I'll log it and send a welfare note to Ms. Keisha, he said, checking the spelling. As a courtesy, he said. If she refuses to confirm possession, that tells me something. If she confirms, that gives you something. Either way, we've put daylight on it. Daylight. Good word. Back home, a flyer was stuck in my door jamb. Oakwood Heights Revitalization Meeting tonight. 7 p.m. Community Center. The clip art skyline had been upgraded to include a tree with suspiciously symmetrical leaves. At the bottom, smaller font, featuring remarks by local entrepreneur Keisha, last name, on moving our neighborhood forward. I laughed again, short and not nice. Marcus was building the scaffolding for her speech. Fine. I could bring a wrench to a scaffolding. I called Mr. Alvarez. 2 things, I said. Possible HOA nonsense and a rezoning circus. We pulled the HOA filings, he said. Keys clicked. A printer hummed in the background. There is a Neighborhood Preservation Association. It's opt-in. You did not opt in. Any lien they threaten is air in a balloon. We'll send them a letter that pops the balloon and CC your daughter. As for rezoning, go if you have the stomach. But remember our rule. No speeches longer than 3 minutes, and never get baited into numbers you can't verify on your feet. I've got a witness though, I said. Mr. Henderson heard the offer at the cemetery. Witness is gold, he said. Ask him if he's willing to write a 1-paragraph statement. We'll hold it until we need it. I went next door. Mr. Henderson was already tying on an apron. I figured you'd ask, he said before I opened my mouth. I wrote down what I heard and put the time as best I could figure. My grandson will type it so it looks official. Do you want to come tonight? I asked. Only if you want me tonight, he said. I'll sit in the second row and shuffle real loud. Shuffling puts fear into people who like microphones. At 6:30, the community center smelled like floor polish and burnt coffee. Folding chairs faced a dais with a banner that read, Our Brighter Tomorrow, in a font that made my teeth itch. The crowd was half curious, half angry, and 1/4 bored because some people attend meetings like it's their cable package. I took a chair near the aisle. Mr. Henderson sat 2 rows up, jacket folded, already settling like a small, determined engine. The councilwoman droned about opportunity corridors. Then she introduced a dynamic voice for progress, and Keisha took the mic like it owed her back rent. She wore the suit that photographs well. She smiled like a politician learning the word humble. Change is hard, she said, and showed a slide with a picture of my block. My house circled like a tumor on an X-ray. But stagnation is worse. Marcus advanced the slides with a remote like a conductor. Ms. Crane sat 2 seats from the aisle, hands folded, face a river stone. Keisha talked about safety, about seniors falling on stairs, about tax burdens, about unlocking value for the next generation. She said legacy 3 times like it was a flavor she enjoyed. She said nothing about graveyards and folders. She didn't need to. She had a stage, a microphone, and a family name that still bought some patience. When they opened the floor, a man with a baseball cap asked about parking. A woman asked about tree canopy. Then the councilwoman said, "One more." And I stood. The room made that small sound rooms make when someone unexpected stands. I walked to the mic and felt my knees like old hinges. I put my hands on either side of the lectern because furniture can be your friend. "My name is Barbara," I said. "I'm a resident of Oakwood Heights. My husband Raymond and I lived in our home for 43 years. 43, I said the number out loud and anchored it where it belonged. "I am not opposed to progress," I said. "I am opposed to cruelty wearing progress as a mask." A murmur. The councilwoman shifted. Keisha's smile held, but her fingers tightened on the remote. 2 days ago, I said, at my husband's funeral, a generous offer was made to buy my home for $5,000. I was told it would be graceful. I was told the clock started now. I said no. Yesterday, I filed a retained life estate with Lighthouse Community Trust. That means the roof over my head can't be flipped by anyone in this room. I held up the clear sleeve with the stamp so the first 3 rows could see ink catching light. I'm sharing that because some of you are older than the people with microphones, and some of you are exactly their age. If anyone tries to buy your grief, say no with people who know how to write it down. Marcus's smile didn't crack. It chilled. Keisha's face went blank in the way only trained faces can. Ms. Crane watched, interested the way a cat watches a glass on a table. I kept it short. "I intend to live where I live," I said. "I intend to maintain my home. I intend to honor my husband's garden. If any of you need a copy of this paper because someone is being pushy with you, I'll be in the back after the meeting. And if you have something to say about my choices, say it to my face. Not on a forum where you can't spell my name." I stepped away before my mouth could offer anything extra. 3 people clapped, then 6, then a ripple. The councilwoman thanked me in a voice like unbuttered toast, and hustled to a new topic, but the room had shifted an inch. Sometimes that's all you get. After, by the coffee urn, a man with paint on his hands asked me about the trust. Mr. Henderson patted my arm and pressed a folded paper into my palm. His statement, neat, typed, signed with a flourish like a good cake. Behind us, Marcus murmured to Keisha, eyes narrowed. Ms. Crane slipped out the side door like smoke. On my way to the exit, Keisha slid into my path. Her smile had gone. "Cute speech," she said. "Sunday will be less cute." "Sunday will be honest," I said. She leaned in. "You want honest? Here's honest. If you don't retract and crawl back to a private solution, that ring never finds its way home, and the story we tell about you gets louder." I looked at her a long 3 seconds so she'd have to hold her own breath. "I filed a report," I said. "If the ring goes missing, you go from daughter to suspect." She actually laughed, short, disbelieving. "You did that." "I did," I said. She stepped back like the air had teeth. Marcus caught her sleeve, smile returning like makeup reapplied. "See you Sunday, Barbara," he said, bright. "Wear something that photographs well." Outside, the night was crisp and the sky clear for once, stars like pinholes in a dark lid. I drove home slower than I'd arrived, as if speed could shake loose what had gathered. On my porch, the new bulb burned steady. Inside, the stamped receipt waited like a sentinel. I set Mr. Henderson's statement beside it, and for the first time in a week felt something in my ribs that wasn't just anger. I went to the kitchen window and looked out at Raymond's garden. The azaleas had started to yellow along the edges. I would cut them back this weekend. I would speak on Sunday spare and clear. And Tuesday, when strangers came to judge the sharpness of my knives, I would show them a house with safe stairs and labeled pill bottles, and a woman who remembered what day it was and why she had decided to keep her home. The phone buzzed once on the mantel. A new message from an unknown number. A recording. I pressed play and Keisha's voice filled my living room, low and careless, caught on someone's open mic. "Don't worry," she said to someone who didn't answer. "If Mama won't bend, we'll make her look unstable. We seed it. Forums, church, council. People believe what's loud. The ring's leverage. Worst case, it disappears until she sees sense." The recording ended with a clink like a glass set on stone. I stood very still. Then I forwarded it to Ms. Benton and Mr. Alvarez. Then I saved it with the name I knew it deserved. Hot Mic MP3. I turned off the porch light and sat in Raymond's chair and let the house breathe around me. The clock ticked like a metronome for stubborn hearts. Outside, the neighborhood went to sleep. Inside, I felt the wheel in my hands finally catch. Tuesday came with a sun that looked like it had been washed on cold. I was up early, walking the stairs on purpose. Up, down, up, counting out loud because the evaluator would ask if I had trouble with stairs, and I wanted my calves to remember how to answer. I labeled the pill bottles, even though there were only 2 and 1 was vitamins. I set the week's meds in a tray with days bold in marker. I wiped the counters until they reflected the window over the sink. I put a notepad by the phone and wrote today's date 3 times. Big. Tuesday. Raymond would have teased me for staging the house like a listing, then helped straighten the dish towels. At 9:57, a Prius coasted to the curb. A man in a navy cardigan and sensible boots stepped out, clipped a badge to his pocket, and checked his watch like someone who respects other people's mornings. "Ms. Barbara," he said at the door. Kind but not performative. "I'm Leon, Adult Protective Services. This is routine. I'll ask some questions, peek around for safety, and then I'll get out of your hair." "Hair's been gone since '99, I said, and he grinned like we'd cleared the small talk hurdle together. He stepped inside, eyes taking in the house like an inventory. Rugs flat, cords tucked, smoke detector blinking. He didn't look for dust. He looked for danger. "First, do you know why I'm here?" he asked, pen poised. "My daughter asked for guardianship," I said. "She's angry the house is protected and is trying a side door." He wrote down petition and family dynamic like a professional anthropologist. "What's today's date?" he asked. "Tuesday," I said. "The 23rd. He nodded. "Who's the president?" he asked, "because they all do." I answered and he didn't blink. He walked the kitchen with a practiced eye. "Knives in a block. Good. Stove knobs have numbers. Even better." He opened the fridge. Milk with a date that didn't require math. Leftovers labeled collard greens. Tape I'd cut straight with a knife because presentation counts when strangers will be judging your collard greens. "Walk me through the house," he asked. We did the stairs. I took them steady, no showboating. In the hall, I pointed at the notch on the doorframe and said, "Keisha at 8. Leon smiled with half his face and scribbled, "Historic engagement with environment." In shorthand only social workers understand. In the bedroom, the bed was made the way Raymond taught me. Hospital corners tight enough to bounce a coin. Leon didn't bounce a coin. He looked at the throw rug and asked, "Can we add tape to the corners?" I said yes and brought tape like a woman who appreciates upgrades. Back downstairs, he set his pad on the table. "I'm going to ask a few questions that can feel insulting," he said. "They aren't. They're for my file, not my opinion. Is anyone pressuring you to sign away rights or property?" "Yes," I said. "Name." I gave it, and it hurt the way certain stretches hurt. Good pain, necessary. "Are you afraid?" he asked. "I'm angry," I said. "But I sleep. Do you feel safe?" "Yes," I said. "Especially since last Tuesday at 10:58. His pen paused like he appreciated the precision. "Any guns in the home?" "No," I said. "Any stairs without railings?" "No." "Do you have someone to call if you get dizzy?" Mr. Henderson, I said, and Ms. Benton if dizziness manifests as paperwork. He laughed cleanly. Okay. He closed his pad. I'm not a judge, he said. But between you and me, you're fine. I'll submit my report by this afternoon. Pending a medical check, blood pressure, simple test from your primary. This guardianship gambit doesn't go far. Gambit, I repeated. I liked the chess of it. As if rehearsed by a director with a cruel sense of timing, Keisha's black sedan slid to the curb as Leon stepped out. She got halfway up the walk before he turned and held up his badge like a shield. Hi, he said, polite, firm. We're finished here. I can't discuss findings with you. I'm family, she said. You're listed as a petitioner, he said, and the smallest smile ticked at the corner of his mouth. Different role. She pivoted to me. Mama. Tuesday, I said, pointing at the notepad on the hall table. Write it down so you remember the day everything didn't go your way. Her face pinched. Leon gave me a tiny nod that said I could be proud of that one without gloating. He left with the exact amount of speed that says both, I am not afraid of you, and, I have other places to be. When the Prius pulled away, Keisha stayed on the walkway like a solicitor who won't cross the line painted on the concrete. You've turned this into a spectacle, she said. You scheduled church, I said. I'm just bringing my voice. She smirked. Bring it, she said. We'll bring witnesses. I tapped the window glass with one finger. I have better. I have recordings. Her smile froze. She adjusted it a degree, then walked to the car like she'd been told to hit her mark. The sedan eased away. I called Ms. Benton. She was fair, I said. Stairs, meds, knives, no nonsense. Good, she said. Her report will say you're capable and your home is safe. We'll ask the court to dismiss on paper, not after a performance. What about Sunday? I asked. We draft a letter today, she said. Short. Declarative. You read it at the pulpit and hand copies to the ushers. That way, no one mishears you on purpose. Make it about Raymond. It was always about Raymond, she said. By noon, the letter lived on my printer tray, a single page with my name large at the bottom like a hand. Mr. Alvarez added the lighthouse letterhead at the top for ballast. The statement said 3 things. Raymond loved this home. I chose a retained life estate to honor him and protect my residency. No one, not family, not developers, could force me out or lean the title. It was plain. It was true. It would look boring on a Facebook screenshot, which is exactly what I wanted. I thought that would be enough for a day. And then the neighborhood forum sprouted a new post. Elder financial abuse. Mom donates house to shady trust. The author had a username that rhymed with Marcus. The comments read like kindling. One line cut, she's right to be evaluated. Another, who gives away a $200,000 asset unless they're confused? I took a breath, then another. I texted Mr. Alvarez the link. He replied, we'll post a neutral explainer from Lighthouse's account. Do not engage personally. Direct anyone who asks to our phone. 10 minutes later, a calm paragraph appeared in the thread. What is a retained life estate? It had 0 adjectives and 3 phone numbers. It was the opposite of bait. But gossip is a flood. The best you can do is put down sandbags and refuse to drown. I added one more bag. I pulled out the photo albums and started picking images for Sunday's dedication we weren't supposed to be planning yet. The garden, the porch swing, Raymond's hands in dirt, Raymond laughing with a tangle of Christmas lights. If the town wanted a story, I'd give them the true one. Even if it meant showing strangers pieces of my private life. That was the price. Small dignity traded to protect a bigger one. Around 3, Mr. Henderson knocked with a tin of peach cobbler and the face of someone who has been reading unkind things and decided not to repeat any of them. Sunday, he said. I'll sit front left, 3rd row, and cough if you start to ramble. Cough a lot, I said. I like my speeches like toast. Brief and warm. He patted my arm and left me with sugar and resolve. At 6, my phone buzzed with another recording from the same unknown number that had gifted me, hot-mic'd MP3. I pressed play. Marcus's voice this time, brisk and bright. The sound of a person still in hair and makeup talking to someone who still needed both. Look, he said, laughter at the edges. Judge Marlowe likes us. She owes Regina a favor from that gala. The evaluation is a formality. We just need optics. Old house, old woman, complicated documents. Make the pastor push her into the spotlight and we'll frame it as confusion. In the background, Keisha's voice. And the ring. Hold until after Sunday, Marcus said. The crowd likes a symbol. If she behaves, we find it. If not, it disappears until she learns decency. The clip ended on a zipper sound and the buzz of crowd noise. The community center hallway earlier, maybe, or church on rehearsal night. I played it twice and felt my jaw square. I forwarded the file to Ms. Benton. Marcus. New one. Judge Marlowe. Favor. MP3. Her reply came fast. Do not share publicly yet. Will transcribe and attach to our motion to dismiss. CC the court's integrity officer. Also forward to Mr. Alvarez. I did. Mr. Alvarez added, if they drag Lighthouse into court theatrics, this becomes pertinent. For now, hold. I held. But holding and hiding are cousins I don't like to invite over too often. So I did one more thing. I wrote a second small statement for Sunday, just in case the pastor's microphone failed or someone shouted over me. 4 lines. Simple. I am not confused. I am grieving and protecting my home. I chose a trust so my husband's garden lives on. No one gets to buy our grief. Not for $5,000. Not for any price. I printed 20 copies and paperclipped them to the lighthouse letter until the stack felt like armor. Night came with a clarity that felt like the weather had picked a side. I turned off the living room lamp and stood in the dark a minute, letting the house outline itself. The window, the plant, the chair where Raymond read mystery novels and made faces when he figured out the twist too early. The porch light threw a neat circle onto the walk. A car rolled by slow. Different sedan this time. Navy instead of black. It paused, then went. I breathed in and out, and the breathing didn't hurt. The next morning, I would drop copies of the letter at Pastor Lee's office and the council office. I would set out extra folding chairs in the garden and pick the last azalea heads for a bowl. I would tape the throw rug corners again because Leon's voice lived rent-free in my head now, and I would sleep with the window cracked to smell the cool. At 10, my phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. A single line. Judge likes early coffee at Sweet Georgia Cafe, and a winking emoji I hated on sight. Marcus again, or someone in their orbit, careless or cocky. I screenshotted it and sent it to Ms. Benton. Her response. Noted. Not for you to act on. I put the phone face down. I turned on the porch light. I checked the chain and then unhooked it because chains make you feel smaller when you don't need them. I stepped onto the porch, breathed the cold, and looked out at Raymond's garden in the moonlight. The azaleas held their pale globes like careful promises. Behind me, the phone buzzed one more time. A voicemail notification. Keisha's voice again, honeyed and thin. Mama, last olive branch. Sunday you say the trust was a misunderstanding. We keep it in the family. Everybody claps. We find Daddy's ring after. Or you make it ugly and Marcus calls in a favor and Judge Marlowe squeezes where it hurts. Your move. I saved it. I named it olivebranchthreat.mp3 and filed it with the others. Then I went to bed, not like a woman waiting for a hammer, but like a woman who had set her tools in order for morning. Friday wore the kind of blue that makes people wash cars. I watered Raymond's azaleas instead and listened to the house settle like a tired animal. The guardianship report had landed clean. Leon emailed 2 lines that read like oxygen. Capable. Home safe. No further action recommended. Ms. Benton filed it with our motion to dismiss and CC'd everyone spelled important. Next move. I asked her on the phone. Public, she said. On our terms. She wasn't wrong. The forum thread was still churning. Sunday was coming like a drum. And the newspaper, the one people still leave in plastic sleeves on porches, closed its Saturday front page at 8 p.m. tonight. I knew because Mr. Henderson's grandson used to intern there and told me the deadlines like gossip. Pack it, I said. But pack it. Agreed, she said. Everything in one place, no adjectives. I set the kitchen table like paperwork was dinner. Top sheet, Leon's evaluation, bold, stamped, bureaucratically beautiful. Next, the lighthouse recording receipt. The instrument number glowing like coordinates. Then, Mr. Henderson's statement, typed, signed. Then, the voicemail transcripts. Olive branch threat. The first graveyard 5,000 line I'd typed out by hand with the exact number because exact numbers matter. And Marcus Judge Marlowe with a note, alleged. And finally, a USB stick with the audio files labeled like a neat little museum of my daughter's tactics. Hotmic.mp3, Marcus Judge Marlowe MP3, Olive Branch Threat MP3. At 2, I called the newsroom. A woman answered like she just had coffee. Features, she said. I asked for news. She transferred me to a reporter named Tamsin, who sounded like she'd rather be early than right, but would prefer both. Can you come by? I asked. Can you email? She countered. I can hand you things that don't forward well, I said. And a neighbor can corroborate. Office doors lock at 6, she said. Front page locks at 8. Clocks make me move. I put the packet in a big manila envelope and scotch-taped the flap like I was mummifying something I never wanted to see again. I put on a decent blouse because optics is what people say when they mean manners. I tucked Mr. Henderson's statement copy under the flap for him to keep, and slipped the USB into the small inner pocket of Raymond's tote like a delicate thing. Mr. Henderson met me on his steps with a jacket on, thermos in his hand, and the determination of a nurse headed into a double shift. I'll ride with you, he said. If I sit in the newsroom, I'll read the bulletin board fast. Fast reading makes reporters take you seriously. We parked in the 2-hour slots you assume no one checks. Inside, the newsroom smelled like paper and old coffee and a little victory. Cubicles wore pinned headlines and photos of groundbreakings from 10 years ago. Tamsin met us in a blazer and sneakers. Hair up like she didn't want it in the way of the truth. What have you got? She asked. Pieces, I said, and laid them out like a card trick with no trick. She read Leon's report first and made a satisfied noise. She skimmed the lighthouse stamp, the memo, the number, then paused at Mr. Henderson's statement. You'll say this to me on the record? She asked. I will, Mr. Henderson said, and his thermos clicked like the soundtrack to Integrity. Audio. Tamsin said. I handed her the USB. She plugged it into a machine that sounded like a tired fan and cupped her hands over the headphones like a person who keeps her hearing for important things. Hotmic.mp3 played in her face. Keisha's voice, low and engineered. We'll make her look unstable. The ring's leverage. Worst case, it disappears. She pulled the headphones down and let out a breath with a word in it I won't repeat in church. Okay, she said, steady studying. She listened to Marcus Judge Marlowe, and her eyebrows went up like awnings in a sudden rain. If this is authentic, she said carefully, it's not pretty. She listened to Olive Branch Threat, and the little gum line by her mouth hardened like someone holding a bit. We'll need to call them, she said. We'll need to call the judge's office too. She made a face I recognized. Journalists don't like calling judges on a Friday afternoon, but they like not calling more. You can have copies of everything, I said. On the record, I'm speaking Sunday. I wanted the paper to hear the adult version before the microphones hear the theater. She nodded, typing now, the keys quick and precise. Why did you choose a retained life estate? She asked, recorder between us like an honest eavesdropper. To keep my home, I said. To keep my husband's garden. To keep people from buying my grief for $5,000. She looked up at the number, then wrote it exactly. 5,000. 5,000, I said. On the day we buried Raymond. She swallowed a small hurricane. Okay, she said softly. Okay. She turned to Mr. Henderson. You heard that offer? I did, Mr. Henderson said. I heard it, and I shuffle mean when I hear mean things. We left them with the packet and a newsroom mutter that sounded like curiosity sharpening into duty. Outside, the sky had gotten the late afternoon idea of being pretty. Sunlight on brick, somebody's wind chimes figuring out a tune. In the car, my hands finally unclenched. We stopped at the bakery because that is how you say to your nervous system, have a cookie. I bought 2 sweet potato pies and 1 extra for the reporter who looked like she had more work than calories. At home, the phone lit with unknown numbers like a carnival shooting gallery. This is Tamsin. We're seeking comment from Ms. Keisha. Click. Judge Marlowe's clerk. The judge does not discuss. Voicemail. Marcus. We categorically deny. I didn't answer. Ms. Benton texted. They're rattled. Journalist says deadline 8 p.m. Good. Do not post audio. Let the paper take first bite. Print buys you a frame that social can't bend as easily. At 6:30, the door knocked in that soft, presumptive way again. I checked the peephole. Ms. Crane. Umbrella. Folio. No sedan at the curb this time. Parked down the block, I guessed. Like a vampire abiding bylaws. I opened but left the screen. You return things people take? I asked. Rings, for example? She glanced barely. The kind of woman who doesn't look where she doesn't already own. Ms. Barbara, she said. A courtesy visit. I wanted to inform you. The Neighborhood Preservation Association has assessed a special fee for legal review of compliance on your block. You're currently in arrears. $47. As of midnight, late fees escalate. You keep saying neighborhood preservation like repetition is a spell, I said. Mr. Alvarez pulled the filings. Opt-in. I didn't. She tilted her head. There are interpretations. There are letters, I said. One is in your inbox. She sighed like a woman bored by obstacles that don't respect her calendar. Here is the practical, she said, stepping closer so her coat touched the screen. We will find a path. Perhaps not a lien on title. That door closed at 10:58. Congratulations. But a lien adjacent. A municipal nuisance fine, a sidewalk pitch, a safety citation, something with teeth. Paper finds a way. Paper already found one, I said. You came to buy it back. No. She smiled with just her mouth. You think the newspaper will save you? She asked. They like conflict. They will drink your suffering and my denial and print both and call it balance. And you will still be an old woman in an old house with people who know where you live. I was an old woman in an old house yesterday, I said. Today I'm an old woman with a stamp. She let her eyes go to the table behind me where the plastic sleeve caught the porch light. Stamps smear, she said, almost tender. Ink bleeds. Some women, I said, confuse poetry with power. She leaned back 1 inch like I'd brushed her lapel. A neighbor told me about a cracked front step, she said. If someone were to trip, say a child, liability can be very clarifying. I recommend you fix it. Also, the porch bulb. She looked up, saw the new bulb trying its best, and almost smiled for real. Good. You fixed one thing. Fix the rest. Or I fix them for you. Fix, I said. Is that what you call it when someone takes a ring? That almost got her. A tiny tick at the temple. I don't handle jewelry, she said. No, I said. You handle leashes. Behind her, a car door shut down the block. Marcus's voice floated, gauzy and mean. Keisha followed, jaw set. They didn't approach. Maybe Crane had told them to wait. They played at subtlety and failed. Ms. Crane set the folio on the porch rail like a suggestion. Last chance, she said. A secured line of credit, an advisory agreement. We absorb the association headache you're about to have. We make this quiet. I like it loud, I said. She looked genuinely puzzled. A woman meeting a taste she'd never ordered. Why? So other people hear it, I said. So they don't sell their lives for $5,000 at a grave. She absorbed the number like a specimen and slipped the folio back under her arm. Newspapers close their front pages at 8, she said conversationally, eyes on my face. You have 90 minutes to decide whether you want to be in the paper as a cautionary tale or a fool. Either can be arranged. See you in print, I said. She dipped the umbrella like a bow she didn't owe me and walked away. Coat perfect, umbrella perfect, the street deciding not to rain just to spite her. I went inside and texted Tamsin. Crane floated association lean again. I declined. If you call her, ask about secured line of credit against HOA assessments and sidewalk heave. She'll pretend not to know those words. She replied with a thumbs up. I chose to interpret as journalistic neutrality. At 7:40, Mr. Henderson's grandson called to say the newsroom had called him too. I told them he said it, he said, crisp as a new page. I told them what time. I told them I shuffle mean. At 7:55, Ms. Benton texted. They've asked for comment from Judge Marlowe's office. Clerk says she doesn't know a Ms. Crane. Good. A beat later. Prepare for blowback. If they can't win in court, they'll smear in church. Sunday. I wrote back. Front left. Third row. 8:02. My phone pinged with a notification from the paper's site. Local woman says no to cemetery lowball. Protects home with charitable life estate. Subhead. Audio suggests pressure campaign. Evaluation clears capacity claim. The story was plain. It quoted numbers. It mentioned the $200,000 estimate I'd said out loud, flagged as my belief, not theirs. It called Marcus and Keisha for comment. Their quotes were careful. The way people speak when their words might be read by a judge later. It noted no wrongdoing found against me. It ended with a photo of Raymond's azaleas I hadn't authorized. Tamsin had taken it from the sidewalk like a thief of beauty, and I loved her for it. My doorbell rang at 8:15. Then my phone, then the text thread lit like a slot machine. Neighbors, old students from when I taught Sunday school for 3 years in the 90s. The pastor's assistant asking for a copy of my Sunday statement to print for the narthex. Mr. Alvarez, good framing. Ms. Benton, drink water. They will escalate. At 8:30, a letter slid under my door. No knock, no bell, just the slide. Furtive, dry. I picked it up with 2 fingers. Notice of intent to place lien. Neighborhood Preservation Association. $47 past due, $29 administrative. A signature that looked like a person had let a chicken walk through ink. I laughed once, hard. Then I took a photo and forwarded it to Mr. Alvarez and Ms. Benton. Mr. Alvarez replied, they can't attach to trust title, but they can harass you. I'll pay $47 from Lighthouse's petty cash, marked paid under protest, and file a complaint with the city registrar about deceptive billing. It deprives them of the story they want. Old woman refuses to pay. Do it. I wrote. I'll repay you in cobbler. She sent back a smile I imagined but didn't see. Ms. Benton, false savior's fangs. Expected. We'll draft a response for Sunday in case they waive this from the pews. I put the notice in the sleeve with the stamp. The guard dog now had a flea pinned beside it. Then I turned off the porch light, left the living room dim, and stood by the window. Down the block, the black sedan idled. 2 silhouettes inside. They didn't approach. They waited, maybe for me to call, to plead, to offer the quiet deal I'd refused. I didn't call. I didn't plead. I put my Sunday statement on the hall table with the lighthouse letterhead on top and Mr. Henderson's typed page tucked like a bookmark. I set the recordings on a second USB labeled, "For Pastor if Mike fails," because my sense of humor had finally come back to work. When I went to bed, the sedan was still there, humming like a fridge. By midnight, it was gone. The house held its shape around me. Ink dry, garden sleeping, azalea heads like moons under the porch light I left on. For once, on purpose, like a lighthouse for anyone who needed to see how you keep what matters when people come with folders and smiling teeth. Sunday morning came with bells and light through stained glass that turned the pews into watercolors. St. Matthew's smelled like lemon oil and old hymns. The sanctuary was full in that way that tells you a town has decided to be small together for an hour. Pastor Lee cleared his throat and did the ordinary things. Welcome, hymn, prayer. While Keisha sat in the front pew on the right, posture camera ready, Marcus beside her with a program he didn't read. When the time came for community remarks, Pastor Lee lifted his eyes over the congregation and found me where we'd planned. Front left, 3rd row. "Barbara," he said gently, and held out a hand. I stood, tucked the lighthouse sleeve under my arm, and walked the aisle with a bowl of azaleas, their paper pale heads trembling like they had nerves. Pastor Lee stepped aside. The microphone smelled faintly of tin and breath mints. I unfolded the single sheet Ms. Benton had printed on lighthouse letterhead and kept my voice plain. "My name is Barbara," I said. "My husband Raymond and I lived in our home for 43 years. He loved this town and he loved our garden. I am grieving. I chose a retained life estate with Lighthouse Community Trust so I can protect my home and Raymond's garden from being sold out from under me. No one, not family, not developers, can place a lien against what I do not own." I held up the plastic sleeve with the stamp so it flashed, and set it on the lectern like a small polite guard dog. If anyone here needs information on this tool, there are copies in the narthex. Lighthouse's number is on the page. I looked up. There were faces I'd known since they had braces. Faces I'd only waved to from porch steps. Faces I'd never seen before today. "That's all," I said. "Thank you." I stepped back a pace. The thing about a short speech is it leaves room for the silence to do its own work. A ripple of claps, first uncertain, then certain enough, crossed the pews. Mr. Henderson coughed once, my signal not to keep talking. I didn't. Keisha stood smoothly, all measured concern. "Pastor, if I may," she said, and without waiting to be invited, she took 3 steps up the chancel. She looked at me like a doctor delivering bad news she would never experience herself. "Mama is confused," she said, voice tuned to sorrow. "She has been manipulated by an organization that—" "Sit down," Pastor Lee said without heat, and it startled her. The pastor didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "Ms. Keisha," he added softly, "we invited your mother to speak and she has spoken." Marcus stood, chin lifted. "The congregation has a right to hear the full." "The congregation," the pastor said, turning the warm iron of his gaze, "has a right to worship without theater. There will be no debate in the sanctuary." He looked back to me. "Barbara, would you like to place those flowers in honor of Raymond?" I carried the bowl down to the communion table. As I set it there, a hush settled that wasn't silence so much as agreement. The petals brushed porcelain. A small clink. Somebody sniffed, the honest kind. In the back, an usher quietly passed out the page we'd printed. Paper flickered like white birds landing. A few congregants turned pages, nodding at numbers. A teenager took a photo of the lighthouse header as if to show future him what to Google. Good. We sang another hymn. I stumbled through the high notes and didn't mind. At the benediction, Pastor Lee paused 1 beat longer than usual with his hands lifted, then said, "Go in peace." And people did what people do when they've been given permission. They filed out and then gathered again in little rings to talk softer. By the bulletin table, Tamsin from the paper stood with a camera and a notebook, sunlight from the stained glass turning her blazer odd blues. She mouthed, "Photo later." I nodded. Keisha and Marcus tried to position themselves by the door. A few people shook their hands out of habit and then realized habit had cost them something before. They pulled back. One older woman with a church fan touched Marcus's sleeve and said quietly, "Not today," and walked on. Marcus's smile curdled like cream turned in summer. At the side aisle, a uniform appeared. Officer Martinez from the Ring report. Sleeves neat, expression tidy. He came to me without hurry. "Ms. Barbara," he said. "Quick update. We contacted Ms. Keisha regarding the ring. She confirmed possession in a voicemail to my desk and said she'd return it when things calm down. That's now on paper. If it appears, good. If it doesn't, we've crossed the bridge you asked for." Across the transept, Keisha saw the uniform and recalculated her posture. She adjusted it into indignant. Marcus touched her wrist, covert, fixing her like a crooked picture frame. Outside, the day had chosen to be gray again. People stood in clusters on the steps, hoods up, collars turned. Tamsin lined us against the brick. Me, Mr. Henderson with his thermos, Pastor Lee with the authority of a kind man, and clicked a few frames. "One at the house too?" she asked. Garden, I said. We walked the 2 blocks slow. A few neighbors followed. Not a parade. Just people who didn't want the story to end at the church door. The black sedan ghosted the corner and then didn't turn in. Ms. Crane had a talent for presence without attendance. In front of my house, Mr. Alvarez waited on the sidewalk with a simple plaque wrapped in brown paper and twine. He held it like a secret he was about to tell gently. Ms. Benton stood beside him with a folded umbrella, the kind you only open at funerals. Dennis from the title office was there by accident, it seemed, walking a small dog that picked its way around puddles like royalty, and when he caught my eye he lifted a hand and didn't explain why he was on my street. People like to see their paperwork stand up in the weather. "Ready?" Mr. Alvarez asked. "Ready," I said. We went through the back gate into the garden. The azaleas lit the overcast like moons fallen into shrubs. The bench where Raymond used to sit had been sanded down and sealed yesterday by Mr. Henderson's grandson for reasons of his own. I suspected his grandfather. A small crowd drifted into the aisles Raymond had insisted on for circulation, not spectacle. Umbrellas bunched like mushrooms. Mr. Alvarez set the wrapped plaque on the fence post and kept it wrapped 1 beat longer than necessary. "This is simple," he said. "No speeches." He nodded to me. I cleared my throat. "This is Raymond's garden," I said, hearing my voice come back to me off damp leaves. "We planted it when our wrists were stronger and our patience shorter. He taught me to wait for blooms. The trust has accepted stewardship and I have accepted the job to live here until I'm done living. That's all." I looked over the fence. The oak creaked. "We're calling it Raymond's garden because we lack imagination and we like the truth." Mr. Alvarez pulled the paper. The plaque was modest, brushed steel, clean type. Raymond's garden. Steward by Lighthouse Community Trust in partnership with the family of Raymond and Barbara. May good things grow here. People clapped, the small kind, respectful. The weather decided it might like to spit a little rain. Tamsin took a photo that would look better in print than in life, the way certain faces do. Marcus's heels clicked on the side path. He and Keisha had decided the optics of not showing were worse than the optics of showing to an audience that was now doing math out loud. They stopped at the gate as if good manners had been installed recently and might still work. "Lovely," Marcus said. "Too much. Very, rustic." Keisha lifted her chin. "Mama," she began, and I held up a hand. "No," I said. "No more offers, no more meetings in pews, no more texts that think threats are olive branches. We're done with your theater." A murmur, nothing ugly. Just a town humming assent. Ms. Crane appeared behind them the way a storm remembers to arrive. Coat dry, umbrella tilted, a woman who would never be caught wrestling with a plastic grocery bag in public. She looked at the plaque as if it had offended her sense of irony. "Congratulations," she said. "You've made your life smaller." "I've made it accurate," I said. She smiled without joy. "Accuracy and victory are not synonyms." "No," I said. "Decency and victory aren't always synonyms either." "I chose decency. You chose math." I nodded at Keisha. She chose noise. I nodded at Marcus. He chose optics. Marcus's mouth sharpened. "And you chose to give away a $200,000 asset," he said, bright, inviting a laugh that didn't come. Tamsin lifted her phone like a periscope. Someone in the back said softly, "She chose to keep her home." Mr. Henderson's thermos clicked once, twice, a metronome for the truth. Ms. Benton cleared her throat, the legal tone. "For the record," she said, conversational to the point of dangerous, "any guardianship petition predicated on incapacity has been effectively mooted by the evaluator's report and will be formally dismissed tomorrow morning on our motion. Any attempt to waive a neighborhood preservation assessment as lien against Lighthouse's fee title has been answered by the county title certificate you see laminated by the cobbler." Mr. Alvarez had taped it there with the efficiency of a person who knows where to put receipts. Anyone who continues to suggest otherwise will be treated as either misinformed or malicious, and will respond appropriately. Keisha tried to speak and found nowhere to put her words. She looked at Marcus for the line. He gave her the smallest shake of his head. She swallowed, the first honest motion she'd made all day. Officer Martinez stepped through the gate, his radio quiet. "Ms. Barbara," he said, and when everyone looked, he didn't flinch. Quick note. A velvet ring box was found in the church narthex this morning by an usher. It contains a ring matching your description and the 1991 appraisal. He held up a clear evidence bag. The wide gold band glinted miserably under cloudy sky. The inscription was there, small as a forgiven sin. For a second, the garden lost its sound. I heard my own heartbeat. I saw Raymond at the kitchen sink, knocking the ring against the pot and making a face like the world's smallest calamity was his to make sweet. I didn't reach for it. "Chain of custody?" Ms. Benton asked, the woman who never forgets to be the woman she is. "Logged," he said. "You can collect this afternoon after processing, or we can release it Monday. Up to you." I nodded because not everything needs a speech. "Thank you," I said. Keisha stared at the bag like it had bitten her. Marcus recovered first. "See," he said, too bright. "All's well that." "No," Officer Martinez said, voice friendly and made of rope. "All's documented that moves forward." He tucked the bag back. "Enjoy your Sunday." They retreated. Not fast, not dramatic. Just the quiet shrinkage of people who've been told the table they set is taken away for someone else's meal. Rain thickened. Umbrellas popped like flowers that know their cue. Tamsin took one last photo. The plaque, the azaleas, the way rain makes colors honest. People began to drift toward the side door where sweet potato pies had been set out by Mr. Henderson's grandson, each on a napkin printed with a small azalea he'd found at the dollar store and decided was destiny. The reporter slid near me. "One sentence?" she asked. "Two," I said, and smiled because I was finally allowed more than one. "I kept my home and I kept my husband's garden where it belongs." She wrote it exactly. When the crowd thinned, Ms. Crane stood alone under her umbrella by the gate, studying the plaque like a chessboard after a loss. "We could have given you money," she said, almost puzzled. "I needed a roof," I said. "I bought one with paper. It was on sale at $10.58. She almost laughed. "Fair enough," she said. She flicked her eyes at Keisha and Marcus huddled by the sedan. "They will heal slowly, if at all." "I'll be here either way," I said. "Now that's what roofs do." She nodded once, small, then left. Umbrella the last thing to exit. By late afternoon, the paper updated the story with a photo of the plaque and the sentence I'd given Tamsin. The subhead mentioned ring recovered, and petition likely dismissed Monday. The councilwoman issued a statement about respecting seniors' choices, which was the kind of leadership that arrives the second there's no risk left. The Neighborhood Preservation Association's website went down for maintenance. Dennis's small dog dragged him past the house a second time and peed delicately on the grass, which felt like a benediction. Inside, I set the lighthouse sleeve and the title certificate on the mantel, not as trophies, but as tools put away. I put Mr. Henderson's typed statement back in the folder, then added a sticky note. T. Plus thank you, cobbler. I hung my jacket with the pockets that close. I washed the bowl the azaleas had sat in. I made coffee. The house did its old sounds. Pipes, fridge, the small sigh the back door makes when it decides to fit again after rain. I stood by the kitchen window and watched rivulets race on the glass like children who hadn't learned to be careful yet. In the evening, the neighborhood settled. A few people slowed on the sidewalk to read the plaque, shoulders cloaked in rain. One of them touched the fence post and whispered something you say for yourself and for ghosts. The porch light reflected in the puddle like a coin I wouldn't spend. The phone buzzed. A text from Keisha. I shouldn't have done some of that. I waited. The 3 dots never appeared. I typed, return his ring properly. Then we can talk about the rest. I didn't hit send. I deleted it. Some things are better on paper. I sat down and wrote a note on a card with an azalea on it. Bring the ring receipt to the station. Then we will talk. Next week. Wednesday, 3 p.m. My porch. Short talk. No folders. I sealed it and addressed it. Tomorrow I'd put it in her mailbox like a neighbor. When night came, I went out to the garden once more. Rain had turned to a soft mist. The azalea heads beaded up like the morning dew. I touched a leaf and it shivered water into my palm. I carried it with me to the porch and let it drip onto the wood my hands had sanded a dozen times across 4 decades of needing the ritual. Across the street, Mr. Henderson flicked his porch light twice, then off. Our old signal from storms back when the power fell out for fun and everybody checked on everybody. I flicked mine twice back. Somewhere a dog barked at someone who deserved it. Somewhere else, someone posted a bad comment and got ignored. I sat in Raymond's chair and listened to the rain. It wasn't the same as the first day. That rain had been a curtain. This rain was a wash. It slid along the roof I would keep until I didn't need roofs anymore, along the gutters Keisha had predicted would be my doom, through the downspouts and into the yard where the plaque told the truth simply. When I finally slept, the house held. In the morning, we'd take coffee to Officer Martinez and bring the ring home by paperwork, not pleading. Monday afternoon, Ms. Benton would file the motion to dismiss with an evaluator's stamp so straight you'd frame it. The HOA would receive a letter marked, paid under protest, and lose interest when it couldn't bite. And on some Tuesday not far from now, I'd stand in the garden with clippers and cut the dried azalea heads back to the place where next year hides. Rain would come or it wouldn't. Clocks would tick or they'd need batteries. I'd oil the hinge that squeaks. I'd count stairs out loud when my calves forgot. I'd talk to Raymond in the kitchen about the right salt for collard greens and he'd tell me, as always, more than I asked. The town would walk past the plaque and remember a little. The newspaper would move on to school board fights and parade routes. Ms. Crane would ply her trade elsewhere. Marcus would find a new place to aim his brightness. Keisha would decide what kind of daughter she wanted to be when a roof didn't equal a payday. And the garden, which doesn't care about our speeches, would do what it does when people stop trying to buy grief cheap. It would open, petal by patient petal, and prove that some things grow stronger when you hold your ground and let the rain come.